I remember being in surgery, and at that moment, I felt love. I thought I must have died on the operating table. My second thought was, wait a minute, if I died, what's all this? Despite not believing in anything and having been told by my parents that I would go to hell because I was an atheist, I wasn't experiencing either one of those scenarios. That's when I really began to wonder what was going on and why I was there. I asked that question in my mind, and there was an answer that came from around me in the atmosphere. The answer was, this is your home. You're a part of me. You're a part of us. Welcome home. When I heard welcome home, I lost it because I remembered. I knew immediately that the life I had on Earth was just an illusion. That experience on Earth was really just a temporary state. I'm Nancy Ryan. I grew up on a small family farm in the middle of cornfields in the very northwest part of Chicago. I was a very unusual kid, deeply spiritual, and I saw a divine presence everywhere. I would tell my family, "Oh my gosh, God is in the trees, spirit is all around us." They looked at me funny because we were devout Catholics. My family was very committed to their faith, not just attending church on weekends or selectively practicing. When I was about 15, news reports about priests abusing children became prevalent, especially in the Chicago area. That's when I began to question my previous beliefs. I wondered if I had just been imagining all that spirituality. By the time I was 16 or 17, I had pretty much decided that God didn't exist. I couldn't reconcile the idea of a loving God with the horrors that were happening. This shift in belief led me away from religion and spirituality. I went to college and pursued a series of degrees in geology, becoming a rational, material-focused scientist. By my mid-20s, I was a firm atheist. After college, I worked for the Department of Energy, doing scientific work in the Western United States. My role eventually shifted to scientific writing and editing because I was good at it, unlike many scientists. This skill carried me through the rest of my career until my mid-40s. At 46 years old, I had moved to Boulder, Colorado. I was beginning to feel dissatisfied with where I was in life. Some things had not gone well. My marriage had ended, and I was at a point where I was really questioning what was next for me. I started looking for another job, thinking a change in employment might be what I needed, perhaps somewhere else, maybe in Denver. Later that month, between Christmas and New Year's, I took a week off from work. I decided to go for a bike ride around town to drop off some stuff at the library, run a couple of errands, and then go out on a trail ride. As I entered a traffic circle, the bike lane I was using disappeared, and the roadway became very narrow. I cautiously eased my way in, noticing traffic coming from my right from the highway into the traffic circle. It looked like the cars were slowing down. However, at the last minute, the lead SUV sped up instead of stopping. I was in a really bad spot, right in the path of the SUV. Instinctively, I put my hand out. From that moment until I ended up on the hood of the vehicle, everything was a blur. Somehow, I flipped off the bike and onto the hood of the SUV. Looking in, I saw the driver was texting. I pounded on her windshield, but she didn't see me. She kept driving, completely unaware of my presence right in front of her. I couldn't hang on. The hood of her vehicle was so slick. I slipped down, desperately trying to grab onto something, but there was nothing. I hit the pavement, and I heard the crack of my helmet. Suddenly, she was over the top of me. Somehow, my backpack got caught on something underneath her vehicle, and at the same time, I reached up with my right hand and grabbed her axle. I don't know how long she technically dragged me, but it was at least 60 feet. Thankfully, a man in a truck behind her saw what was happening. He drove his truck around the traffic circle the wrong way and stopped in front of her, forcing her to stop. I owe my life to this guy. As soon as she stopped, I started trying to wiggle my way out from underneath the vehicle. I got to the point where my shoulders were out from underneath the front of her car. At that moment, a woman approached and said, "I'm a nurse. Just stay where you are." I thought, what's the big deal? I'm just going to get up and walk away. But she insisted, "No, you were in a serious accident. I just need you to stay on the ground." When the paramedics arrived, they began assessing my condition. As soon as one of them touched the side of my neck, I screamed at the top of my lungs from the pain. That's when I realized I was in pretty bad shape. They brought me to the trauma unit. I was taken to the trauma center, where they diagnosed me with a head injury, a cracked collarbone, 5 ribs broken in multiple places, and a collapsed lung. The main damage, however, was to my neck and back. The doctor said, "Every process in your back is cracked, and you've got major damage to your neck and lower back vertebrae." They called in a surgeon who decided he could fix it. He planned to clean up all the broken bits and put titanium rods up and down my back on either side of my spine. The surgery was scheduled for the Monday after the accident, just 3 days later. I had an unbelievable fear of death, which had been the biggest fear of my life. It paralyzed me in many ways. So going into this surgery, I was really scared and almost convinced I wasn't going to make it. As they wheeled me in and moved me onto the operating table, the anesthesiologist administered the anesthesia. Within 3 seconds, I was drifting off. In my previous surgeries, I would experience gray nothingness until they woke me up in the recovery room. But this time, I drifted off and felt even more awake than before the anesthesia. It was at that moment I realized something really strange was happening. I woke up and found myself looking at a beautiful hillside. It was like a meadow with low grass and flowers all around me. I was on the hillside looking out, over a series of rolling mountain ranges. I thought, well, this is kind of a cool hallucination. I can handle this while I'm in surgery. The first thing I noticed was a wave of peace. It felt like standing in front of a fireplace with the heat coming through you, as if I was being hugged. There was a profound sense of acceptance and unconditional love enveloping me. It was powerful, and that's when I knew something was not right. I thought, oh my God, I died. I must have died on the operating table. Then my analytical, scientific mind kicked in. Wait a minute, if I died, what's all this? First of all, I don't believe in anything. Second, my parents told me I would go to hell because I'm an atheist. So I'm not experiencing either one of those. That's when I really began to wonder what was going on and why I was there. I asked that question in my mind, and then there was an answer that came from around me in the atmosphere. The answer was, "This is your home. You are a part of me. You're a part of us. Welcome home." When I heard welcome home, I lost it because I remembered. In that moment, I knew immediately that the life I had on Earth was just an illusion. That experience on Earth was really just a temporary state. Temporary state, and this is real. It was like a revelation. Suddenly, someone materialized out of the fog. She was ephemeral, vaguely human, with long hair. But I couldn't see her face because it wasn't about her. It was about me learning what I needed to learn. She said, "It's time for you to learn what you need to learn in order to go back and make your life one that would be worth living." Those were pretty much her exact words, and I was taken aback. I protested, "Whoa, I'm not going back there. Are you kidding me? I am not going back to that place." But she calmly replied, "You've already agreed to go back." I was skeptical. I challenged her, saying I didn't want to go back and that I didn't remember agreeing to it. She explained that I had made this agreement before I was born into my life. Then, she showed me. It was like a movie moment with a screen materializing in the air in front of me, revealing me planning my life before I was born. I saw it all laid out before me, and it was surreal. Behind me, there was only fog, a foggy gray void, while in front of me it was vibrant, like a forest, a canyon, or a mountain. I asked her about the contrast, and she said, "The place you are in now is not the ultimate reality of where you're going to go. It's sort of a holding place." She called it a place of learning. "Here we make this environment comfortable for you to learn in, tailored to your preferences and comfort, to allow you to learn what you need in order to make your life worth living when you go back." She taught me about this spiritual place, explaining that everything is based on an energetic structure, not a physical one. Everything around me was an illusion. The more I thought about it, the more I knew it to be true. The equivalent amount of time that I spent on the operating table, when my blood pressure tanked and my heart rate stopped, lasted at most about 2 minutes in our perception of time. However, if we were to translate what I experienced in terms of places I traveled and things I learned, it would take about 2 or 3 months here to achieve that level of learning. But it also felt like forever there. It was a completely different experience of time. What I realized from that is that it's not that time passes differently. It's that they are outside our perception of time on a spiritual level. I went to one place where I stood and saw the map of my life all around me, like a virtual reality map, reminiscent of an old nautical chart. I was at the center, and there was a compass rose. Looking all around, there were these different pathways that I could see from one end of the map to the other. I knew those were all the different paths I had taken, or could have taken up to this point. Then there were a lot of pathways branching out from where I was, but all leading back to the same place. The point of that teaching was, first of all, we can take many paths in life, and they pretty much bring us to the same destination. So there isn't necessarily one right path that you need to be on. The other part of that teaching was that I noticed the compass rose was centered figuratively in my heart area. The point of that teaching was to emphasize that you don't just use your brain to make decisions. You also have to tap into intuition or inner knowing. She said to balance those two out so that you're making decisions from a holistic place rather than solely from an analytical perspective. Up until that point in my life, I had completely ignored that. I hadn't paid it any attention at all. After that, I experienced what people call a life review. At the time, I had no idea about these terms, about NDEs or life reviews. She led me up a meandering mountain valley to what looked like a pond in the mountains. She said, "I want you to kneel down by the side of the pond and just touch the surface." So, I did it. I sat back on my heels and watched the surface of the pond, observing the ripples as they spread out. On top of the ripples, there were small pockets that looked like little videos of specific moments in my physical life. When I focused on one, I was transported back into it, experiencing it again from my perspective. But I could also feel everything from the perspective of the other people involved. I felt their emotions as if they were my own. This deeply affected me because I could sense the impact of my actions. There were times when I helped someone or said something kind, and I could feel their spirit soar. I could sense how uplifted they felt because of my words or actions. And I could also see the downstream effects of those positive interactions, how they influenced others in turn. This teaching emphasized that every interaction we have, whether verbal or nonverbal, has a spiritual or energetic component, and it impacts those around us. We should be conscious of how we affect others and strive to have a positive influence. On the flip side, I also learned from moments that weren't so great. For example, there was a time when my younger sister and I got into a fight. We fought like cats and dogs when I was a kid. We just did not see eye to eye. Although I loved her, we didn't get along very well. At around 17, I remember saying something unkind to her when she was 14. In the moment, I didn't think much of it. I just wanted to end the argument. But during my life review, I felt the hurt I caused her deeply. It was a profound moment for me, realizing the impact of my words on someone I cared about. Feeling her pain was a significant teaching moment. It made me understand, on a visceral level, how my actions affect others. It was a wake-up call, prompting me to change how I interact with people. Since then, I've been mindful and careful about my interactions with others. This realization guides me in formulating how I interact with people every day. It's a lesson I carry with me, shaping my interactions and decisions. As I reflected on this, I looked up, and for the first time in my experience there, I saw clouds in the sky. We were just looking for animals up in the clouds, enjoying the moment. Eventually, my guide got up and said, "Well, it's time for you to go now." I wasn't happy to hear that. I thought I had passed some sort of test and would get to stay there longer. In my mind, I was planning an end run around my teacher, thinking maybe I could just keep running until I found where I was supposed to go. I even considered that if I pitched a big enough fit, they might let me stay. Feeling a bit weepy, I hoped to convince her to let me stay, but instead, she laid her hands on my shoulder, where I had broken ribs, and on the top of my sternum, which was cracked. Then she sent me back. I woke up in the recovery room, screaming and yelling. I was furious to be back and kept asking where she was and if I could go back. The nurse assisting me was startled, and they thought I might be having a psychotic episode. The anesthesiologist calmed me down, but I continued to insist they send her back to me. They had no idea who I was referring to. Eventually, they brought in a friend from the waiting room, but it wasn't her. I felt terrible for involving her, but I desperately wanted to see the woman I was with during surgery. They were baffled by my insistence. Eventually, my rational mind kicked in, and I realized they didn't understand what I had gone through. So I stopped talking about it. The next morning, a chaplain from the hospital stopped by my room. I was relieved to see her and exclaimed, "Oh, thank God you're here." She came in and we talked about what had happened. She was amazing, providing a supportive and accepting presence. Her positive reaction encouraged me to open up about my experience. She explained that what I had gone through was a near-death experience, NDE. It was the first time I had heard of it. She reassured me that it was a real and normal experience. Now, she encouraged me to contemplate what this experience meant for me. I realized that it had the potential to completely shift my perspective on life, challenging everything I thought was real and true. It was a profound moment of realization, and I knew that it would shape the course of my life moving forward. It felt like I had a choice. I could either go back to the way things were, completely denying everything that had just happened, or I could embrace the experience and continue to learn from it. Going back to my old life seemed safe and predictable, even though I didn't like it. But the other path was unknown, and I had no idea where it would lead. I worried about what it would mean for my career, especially since I was still in the sciences. I feared people would see me as crazy, and I'd never find work again. Despite this fear, about 2 weeks later, when I returned home from the hospital, I decided to give this new path a chance. I was out of the body cast in just 2 days over 4 weeks, a much faster healing process than expected. One of the first things I started doing was going out into nature every day to meditate. It helped me bring a soul-level awareness into my life. The second thing, although simple, had a profound impact: learning to be grateful. Every morning before getting out of bed, I would express gratitude for simply being alive. It set a positive tone for the day and helped me appreciate even the simplest things, like being able to walk. I allowed myself to meditate on these basic abilities, really feeling the gratitude for them. I could have been a paraplegic, but I was grateful for the ability to walk. Practicing gratitude for these small things allowed me to focus on the good in my life and stay centered and present throughout the day. Living in the moment without being on autopilot became crucial. Previously, I often found myself on autopilot, but now I'm more aware of my actions in the present moment. I'm no longer caught up in dramas like I used to be. While I still have concerns about the world, I maintain a core of peace within myself. I recognize the importance of being present in this reality, as it has lessons to teach us. However, I've learned to live from a soul-level awareness rather than just my limited human perspective. Transitioning to this higher level of awareness has brought more peace, connection, and love into my life. It's not that my previous human awareness was bad, but it was fear-filled and reactive. I wanted to live more proactively, from a place of peace and love. Embracing this higher level of awareness has allowed me to do just that. Joyful, it's a much better place to be. I'm not anywhere near as stressed out or fearful anymore. This change has been really transformative for me. I'm no longer driven by the material world or stuck in narrow perspectives. I understand that there's a bigger picture, not just to the world but to each of us individually. The fear of death used to hold me back from fully living. It kept me thinking small and safe, which isn't where we're all meant to be at all times in our lives. While it's okay for some people and some moments, making decisions based on fear feels limiting to me. When I work with people, I strive to help them make decisions from a place of strength, trust in themselves, and compassion or love rather than fear. My teacher calls this life a near-life experience, which I find amusing. It's as if we're almost living, but not quite. We come here for various reasons. Some come to learn specific lessons, while others seek broader experiences. Each of us has our own unique journey during this near-life experience, and understanding this perspective has been enlightening for me. We come here to experience things that are unique to this physical reality, things that we can't experience anywhere else, or would be very difficult to experience elsewhere. For example, having a child is an experience that's exclusive to life on Earth. This physical reality acts as a crucible, a focused environment where we can learn a multitude of lessons in a short span of time. Despite the various reasons or purposes people may have for coming here, there's one core purpose we all share: to learn how to be here in this environment and still live from a place of love and compassion, extending beyond our immediate circles to encompass everyone. This journey of learning to live from a place of love and compassion is the essence of our existence in this reality.